Okay, so welcome to another video. Today I want to share a small section of a full step-by-step tutorial where I'm drawing this Parson Russell Terrier. I'm drawing on Fabriano Artistico hot pressed watercolour paper, and I'm mainly drawing with Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils with an odd Caran d'Ache Luminance pencil in there too. The complete step-by-step tutorial can be found over on Patreon and includes the line drawing, a reference photograph and a full list of materials used. So here's a snippet of the tutorial where I share 20 tips for drawing realistic dog's noses in 20 minutes. I hope you enjoy. So let's have a look at this little dog's nose. I've got a coal grey 6 and I want to start to plot this area out. So I've got quite a sharp coal grey 6. And with the little dashes that I use to sketch and plot things, I'm going to come around the bottom of these nostrils. I'm using quite sketchy, quite light little dashes to just sketch this area in. I'm only sketching, so I'm using really light pressure, and I want those pencil strokes to just be fairly relaxed. I don't want them to be really tight. I certainly don't want to press on hard, because if I make a mistake at this stage, I can just amend it. We've got the dark bit that comes down the centre of the nose. We've always got that little bit on a dog's nose. We've also got these lovely wispy bits. Got these wispy bits around here. So I'm just going to pop those and just plot those in. And already as I do this, I'm starting to build up the shape. I can start to see the nose sort of emerging from the face. Even just putting these few lines in. I'm going to take the coal grey 1. So I'm looking for the highlights. When I decide what colour to go to after I've plotted the area in, I'm looking for the highlights in the reference photograph. I'm looking for the colours that I know the highlights are going to be. It's not the end of the world if you choose a highlight colour, a base layer colour at this stage that isn't right. You can always adjust it and amend it. Things can always be adjusted and amended. It's not a case of you get one chance to make a decision, and then if you make that decision and you make a wrong decision, that's it, that's the end. It doesn't work like that in art. It's not, it's, you know, it can be corrected. It's not that, I was about to say it's not that important. It is obviously important because we want it to look nice and realistic, but it can be corrected. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not the end of the world if a wrong pencil goes down at a wrong point. It can definitely be amended. And I'm going to come back to this nostril area. Now the top of this nostril there isn't really an edge that I can see. It's certainly not a hard edge. It's really, really very soft. And at points around this nostril, you sort of lose where the edge of the nostril is and where the nose starts. So what I want to do is I'm taking a coal grey 6 and I want to just curve. I'm using little curves. If I just go back to my piece of paper, I'm just using little curve strokes like that. Little curve strokes, not quite so big, but around the edge of this nostril, because I want to just shape the edge of this nostril off and into the nose. And you see me working on it quite slowly. Me working on the area slowly means that I can shape an area to how I think it should be. But then if it's not right, if I haven't shaped it right, there's not much that's gone down there. I can just, amend it with subsequent layers. It's a lot easier than going in really, really heavy. I'm just bringing a bit of the pigment around here, leaving a bit of a space under the nose and also on this side. So you can see that I've used the pencil, I've put several layers down in the middle there to make it darker, but now I don't want to use the pencil to its full capacity now. I just want to put a light dusting of the pencil over this area to start to put in the depth of colour to start to create that 3D shape of the nose. And you can already see just adding this darker value underneath here, adding this darker bit, has already made this dog's nose start to take on the actual shape of the nose. We've got the lighter bit on top where it would obviously be lighter because the light would be catching it, the darker bit underneath, and we're already starting to create that curved effect of the nose just by putting in a couple of layers of pencil. There's a little bit around here, there's a little bit here, and there's a little bit here that I was just plotting in, still with the cold grey 6. So me now adding a slightly darker bit, and I'm not pressing on any harder, but what I am doing is going over that area a couple more times. I'm going over that same pencil stroke a few more times before I move on. So making it slightly darker around here. I'm putting these darker bits in there, and also it'll end up coming a bit darker down here. Hopefully you can see that that has now put some values on the outside of the nose, and that has now made this nose pop forward a little bit. We haven't got any of the other fur around there yet, but just putting this darker bit here and there has just made this nose pop out of the face a little bit. It's started to shape it. So you can see how just tiny little bits of darker area, just that tiny little bit and the tiny bit there, and it's made that nose pop forward. Values are really, really quite important, and that sort of demonstrates that really. The lights and the darks and the contrast that you get between areas and how the lights relate to the darks, that's what builds up the 3D shape. That's quite important. So I don't want to go too dark. I always want to be a little bit conservative with any decisions that I make as to how dark values go. When I'm plotting things in like this, I can always make it darker. But I just want to have a bit of an educated guess as to how dark to make it. And then as I start to add other areas in, I'll see whether I need to go darker. If I have made it too dark, if I've made a mistake and I've made it too dark, and when everything else is in and I think actually I needed to not make that dark, well, it's not the end of the world. You just grab your kneadable eraser. Usually I'll just grab my kneadable eraser. If I really need to take a lot out, I'll use the Tombow, but usually just a kneadable eraser will do it for me. And I can just dab that value, I can just dab that dark area back out. So it's not the end of the world if you do need to take pigment back out. That is, of course, as long as I've pressed on lightly. If I've gone in really, really hard and really pressed that pencil down into that area, the kneadable eraser is unlikely to remove much. It'll take a bit off, but it's probably not going to go back. It just depends how you put the pencil down. But there's a chance you won't get it to go back to where you want it to go to. So it is easier to start lighter and go darker. But it's not the end of the world. You know, you can always correct things. I'm just going to come around here and add an extra little bit of dark area into these hairs that are on the top of the nose, just to shape it a little bit more. Still working really, really lightly. I'm holding my pencil closer to the edge and I've tipped it up as if I'm writing, but I'm still not pressing on hard. This is the sepia 10%, and I'm just going to use a little bit of this, but I'm just going to put this into this area up the top of here. This is the Payne's grey that I'm coming in with now, because I could see that blue area. I'm going to use the Payne's grey, and I can certainly see some of the warm greys in here as well in places, but I'm just going to use the Payne's grey in the area that I can see it's a little bit darker, and I can see it's a bit darker and a bit more blue around here. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of this in, bring that in down the bottom. Take that up the side of this nose. Really, really, really gentle pressure again across the top of this nose. This is where this nostril just really sort of blends in with the top of the nose. It blends in around here. I'm just using these little curved strokes to just feather the edge of this nose off. And just bring these little directional strokes just around the outside of this nose. Just down there. I'm going to come into these dark nostrils. This is a dark sepia, and I want to start to think about making the inside of these nostrils quite dark now. I'm going to feather it off on the edge because I've said there's not really much of a distinction between the edge of the nostril and then what blends into the nose. There's a tiny little bit that comes around the edge of the nose there. It comes around this side as well, but it's a bit more bluer and it's a bit more less defined on this side. I'm just going to put a bit of the dark sepia into there. And the Payne's grey and the dark sepia, in my opinion, they come together and they create a nice charcoal colour. And I quite like that. So I do use the dark sepia and the Payne's grey quite often actually together. This bit under here is, it's lighter, but it's not really light. This is a coal grey 3. And I'm going to go around this area with a coal grey 3. And just make this a little bit darker. Blend that out. Blend this out as well. Blend this up the top as well. Just on this side, I'm going to blend off the side of this nostril. Blend that out. Another little tip that you might find useful is, you can see here that I've just put this is the coal grey 3, and I know this nose isn't finished, but I've just put the coal grey 3 around this little nose, and it definitely looks a little bit bluer on the reference photograph. But when you put so the coal grey 3 is obviously a coal colour, and you may know, coal colours get pushed back, they recede back into the distance, and the warm colours get pulled towards you, and they come towards you as you look at a picture. So by taking the coal grey 3 and putting it around the edge there, obviously we've already put the dark value in right on the edge, which has already made the nose pop forward, but by putting the cold around there, that has pushed that bit of the nose back, it's pushed it away from you. And then this bit that we're going to keep, the warmer colours, that has come towards us. So again, this little bit here has helped to shape the nose and put a bit of perspective on that nose. So I'm going to take this warm grey 6 and I'm just going to blend out the edge of this nostril again, because there isn't really a really defined line between the edge of that nostril and between the top of that nose. So I'm going to do that. I'm also just going to take this over here a little bit, just on this side, and put a little bit of darker value on this part of the nose here. So going across the top of the nostrils, coming down. I'm going to make that a little bit darker because obviously this is the bit that's curving round. So we want to make that a bit darker. But at the same time, I just want to break up the edge of that nostril. Don't want to take the nostril too far up. I just want to break up the edge of that just a little bit and just shape this down here on this side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the warm grey 6 up and under this area again. Just going to make sure that's nice and defined up there. Okay, so this warm grey 6, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this area and I'm just going to use little circular strokes, almost creating little circles. They don't have to be uniform, they don't necessarily have to be exactly the same size. If I just grab a piece of paper, this is what I'm doing. I'm just creating little circles. I don't want to press on too hard. You can see that I'm just creating little circles, but I've got little bits of, I've got little gaps in the middle. So I'm doing the circular stroke that I would do, that circular movement. But this time, whereas before when I was applying colour, I'd fill that in, I'm just leaving little just leaving little gaps, not going round over it again and filling it in. They don't all have to be uniform, they don't all have to be touching. It's just a little bit of a circular pattern that I want to build upon the top of this nose. And that's just going to create some of this texture. If you're finding it quite difficult to keep going around in circles and to not fill them in, you can just do little separate circles like this. I'm just doing little circles, almost like little dots actually. So if you're struggling with the circles, you could even just do little dots. I'm just doing little circles. It doesn't matter whether you join them up, whether you keep them separate. Just creating that little bit of texture. Can you see that bit of texture in that nose? And then if you have the French grey 10%, I'm going to go over the top of this and blend this with the French grey 10%. But if you don't, you could just go over it with your warm grey 1 again. So I'm just going to come in again with little circular strokes because I've already started to put a bit of the circular pattern in here. So I'm just going to come around and over the top with these circular strokes. I want to come in with a darker colour again. Now this is a black, it's a black polychromos. I've just put it in a pencil extender because it's really quite small. So I just want to come in with the black and feather out of the end of this nose. Now I don't want to completely go over everything that I've put down underneath. I don't want to completely make this area black. I want some of this colour that has gone down in the layers underneath to show through. But I'm going to feather the top of this nostril. And I'm just going to use little circular motions on the bottom because I can't see any direction down there. It's so dark. I just want to put a bit into the bottom down there. And again, even though I'm working with the black, I'm working really, really lightly. I just don't want to put any pressure down. The pencil that's going down is almost non-existent. This is the Cold Grey 5 and I'm going to bring this around here. Darken that down just a little bit. And the Fabriano will take a lot of layers, so you can just keep building it up a little bit at a time. And that's definitely the best way in my opinion, and it will take the layers, it will take those layers. Not all papers will. This is the Payne's Grey again, I'm just blending this off. Not all papers will, but so you'll sort of have to go with whatever paper you've got, with whatever your paper, however your paper works, that's how you'll have to apply the pencil. But I know the Fabriano will take a lot. I'm not necessarily saying the Fabriano is better, it's just different. Just depends what you want. Just breaking these little highlights up on the bottom, and they were a little bit big, so I'm just making them a bit smaller. Looks a little bit better now. I've just broken that one up and broken that one up around there. It just looks a little bit better. I'm going to take the warm grey 1, and we've already started to put a bit of hair that's coming down onto the nose, and now I'm just going to take this off that nose a little bit. Feather this around, feather it around the side of the nose. These little bits of hair that we've put on the top here, you can see from the reference photograph, they're not white. They're light, but they're not white. So I want to colour them. I want to put some of this warm grey 1 down and colour them. But what I want to do, because we're working from a very dark area into a light area, I want to use the pencil this way. I want to take it from the dark into the light and colour those light bits that way. And that means that I won't contaminate, I won't pick up all the dirty pigment on the end of the pencil that's come out of the darker area and put it down into the light area. So I always work dark to light when I'm blending two colours together, one that's very dark and one that's light. I'll always work from the dark to the light. I'm just going to blend that a little bit more. Okay, so that's it. 20 tips in 20 minutes for drawing realism into dogs' noses. Really hope that you have enjoyed the video. If you have, do give it a like before you go. That really helps my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications if you'd like to see more videos like this. I put regular videos out here on YouTube. And if you've got any questions or if you've got any comments, then drop them below in the comment section and I'll come back to you and answer any questions as soon as I can. So there we go. Really hope that you've enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you next time.